Hello, I'm Timo Peach. I am a music maker and a creative, and I was lucky enough to get to create the score to the wonderful short by director Andy Robinson, 2 Feet Tall. And what a delight it was to work on. Andy is a very dear friend of mine, but he's a very thoughtful creative. He really knows as a writer and director how to nail the emotional sweet spot, what to put on the page, and then how to interpret that with camera and players and craft. And 2 Feet Tall is definitely crafted. But of course, script doesn't quite feel like the right word to describe how this was created as a screenplay, because there's no dialogue, there's no faces, it's entirely feet. And as soon as Andy described the concept by Wend Baker, which he went on to flesh out into a whole little narrative with her, as soon as he described that to me, I was hooked. I just thought, this is a beautiful concept. But of course, part of this takes us back, as he's often said, to the art of truly early filmmaking, because there's no dialogue. There's actually no sound to speak of. There's Foley and there's sound design, but it communicates without anything in the original rushes I had here on screen. And that means it's all about music. It's no pressure, Peach. So where did I start? Well, let's take a look through the film. I'm going to play it from the last cut I had in Logic, which is what I used to compose in. And we can talk about kind of how it affected me and where I started. Now, I tend to start with a sound. If we bring that in there. Palette of sounds is an important place to start for me, and usually as a composer I'm either thinking about sounds or melody first, and as I'm just mucking around usually on the piano, something comes to me, but I can hear in my head probably how it sounds and the instrumentation. It's all about empathy for me, trying to feel my way into the truth of this world, and sonically what that might be, what instruments. But as you're feeling your way, it's then good with experience to make some choices, using your head, about how big the palette of sounds is that will articulate that world. And something about this glass marimba sound, this sample I've got here, just sounded a bit delicate and otherworldly, and I think this is the word, fairy tale, because 2 Feet Tall is a fairy tale. So working through this, I came up with this little riff. And there's 2 feet. That was the beginning of the riff I just played on the piano. It sounded sort of slightly open-ended, very slightly otherworldly, and a bit melancholy. And I think Andy said to me he wasn't quite expecting something quite so odd in this, and this isn't really where it gets odd, to be honest, but it's an odd idea for a film, you might say, and yet it's also a very touching film, very intimate, and very otherworldly, fairy tale. So I think that's why this glass marimba sound just resonated with me as I played the melody with it, this slightly melancholy thing. It's beautiful the way he builds up the language of this visually. That melody, da, 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 da. That's when I was hooked on it, because I could hear the heart in that. There's something sad, but recognise a boring boardroom. You can recognise a boring boardroom just from feet, just on the carpet, can't you? And instantly you know the language of this film, don't you? You can tell what's happening here and how Andy's genuinely, instantly creating emotion just with people's feet on screen. And then I decided to get a bit more weird and abstract. That vintage drum machine sound, and then not feet, hands. It's samples of a vintage Roland drum machine. I just wanted big in the mix. It's really not hidden. It's very, this is a one conspicuous sound that is artificial, and here's big clapping noises that to hark back to something 60s almost, like Take 5 or something. And you might say, mate, it's hands, not feet. I think you've miscued there a bit. But it's not about feet, this show. It's about this film. It's about 2 Feet's confidence and how she finds it. And in that sense, it's using parts of the body generally to communicate in the simplest form. So it just felt right using the sound of hands, because the sound of feet is a bit, stomping feet is just got a different vibe. It's more aggressive. It sounded like flesh slapping together, and that just seemed right. But still, this melody that's quite heartbreaking. Yes, it's loaded, but so's the film in a way. It's got a very strong emotional centre of gravity, and I just went with it in the music. That's a lovely touch where her feet are up, camera tips up. And coming back to this and watching it again, even just without all the grading visually and without all the extra sound design that locks it together so nicely, just this silent cut and the music, I find it moving, I find it affecting. It's very marked out, this film, isn't it? Very strong, with the tissue falling on the floor in the cubicle and the person homeless and the money, but it really nails it. It goes right for the centre of what the story's about. And then I love this moment where 2 Feet considers the puddle and someone else just jumps through it in these colourful wellies in slow-mo. And the way he's lit that, I know building the puddle took quite some time, didn't it, apparently? Filmmaking. And the way, it's like a little pull in to 2 Feet thinking about it, to her feet. But for that little sequence, I decided to make it more otherworldly still. This is like a spiritual moment for 2 Feet, where she goes, hang on, this is all about the way I'm seeing life. I'm seeing life like a victim, like things aren't going my way in this boring office job, and the other people at the office who don't want to talk to me, all communicated silently through feet. And suddenly, this lovely, supremely human moment of realisation. It all depends how you see life. It's touching even talking about it, isn't it? So I brought in these kind of singing bowls and kind of slightly Eastern-sounding rhythmic elements, just a bit where the colourful wellies dance there. It's like, hang on, you're transcending your circumstances a bit here, which is what a self-aware being can do if they choose to. And 2 Feet does here, and it leads to her lovely epiphany of just changing her shoes and walking differently. And that adds to the basic palette of sounds that was, along with a glass marimba, like a fairy tale, and that really artificial, just for wonky style of the old Roland drum machine. In the middle there, the classic emotional heartland of 2-part violins and a cello. The violins from my dear musical mate Pete Whitfield, who's helped me of Real String bring alive so much emotion in my work over the last decade and more. And Simon Lockyer, who often stands in and does cello for me. And together that little 3-part string thing just delivers the emotional message without any mucking about, and bringing that in, and then a few of these other Eastern flavours. I like the idea that this is quite an abstract, hyper-real experience, but really clear. The film is shot with such clarity and simplicity to communicate. Nothing extraneous at all. And so I wanted that in the palette of sounds, so you can pick out everything that's going on. then here where 2 Feet dances in the puddle. Oh gosh. It gets you right there in its feet. Gosh. Nice little violin trill there, something's coming. And there she is in her shoes. I always said to Andy, I will put this in, I always thought that the close-up, what's quite cute is that 2 Feet's new shoes are a little bit too big for her, and it would be great if she stuffed a little bit of paper in the back to kind of pad it out, like she's trying out her confidence. It would be quite delightful. This is nice, character building, and then, you know, the strident way 2 Feet confronts Tom putting his shoe on back on. I think it's Tom. And the fullness of that tune is just what I love doing. It's a big emotional message, full on, just like the film is in its delicate way. It feels very cohesive to me, and I really like the simplicity of the sound and the emotion of it in here. And then, gosh, this bit just when you felt a bit going again. I'm going again, because 2 Feet gets to the puddle, and the homeless guy somehow at this point has got back on his feet, and it's such an old-fashioned bit of romanticism that communicates absolutely the right thing. This isn't about men and women; it's about people. And oh no, I must be tired. I'm going to go. It's people carrying people. I mean, what a beautiful thing to communicate with just shoes and feet. How has he done it? And I like the jump cuts. It adds to the style. And it's like 2 Feet's changed. She's had an emotional difference. This is now an old shot in this version I'm showing on screen here. It's old shoes, so it's a previous cut, but yeah, so there we are. And then at the end, had to have something uplifting. It ends on a sort of almost fully happy note, and it just flowed out of me, this bit. I just felt it had to do this. Yeah, so there we are. That's a little insight into the musical world of 2 Feet Tall, and how much I enjoyed working on it, and sort of a little bit of reasoning about the simplicity of it. Andy was very open to me bringing something unexpected to him, and just had the courage to go with it. And I found on both sides of directing a project, being directed and doing it, you do get best results when you trust the people you've picked, because presumably you've picked them to be in your team for a reason. And I think that's the secret to good filmmaking, is that you really do pick those who can best tell this story, and then you trust them to get on with it. And he really trusted me to just go with the emotional flow and hit the sweet spot. He let me do that, and the end result was something I'm very proud of. I think it's a lovely addition, and what emphasis on the music. You know, thank you, Andy, for making this gorgeous little film, and for taking us all to film school, apart from anything else, but also, you know, to nail something so wonderfully human. It almost wants to be in black and white, doesn't it, to fully ram home the kind of silent film ethos of it. So, yeah, that's me, the bloke from Momo Tempo, scoring 2 Feet Tall by Andy Robinson, and what a privilege it was. I really hope you enjoy watching and sharing this film.